Hello, everyone, and welcome to my stream of Raid Shadow Legends. Now, before we get started, I want to do a disclaimer. I am not the best at this game. I'm not the worst either. I have been playing since before version 1, so I've been playing for well over 2 years. I think pretty close to 2.5. So I do have a lot of experience, and I just wanted to share some of my thoughts that I think are common misconceptions in the online community. Specifically, I wanted to clear up some stuff regarding... Alright, get out of here. No. Sorry. Wanted to clear up some stuff regarding some of the champions that are considered bad in the legendary category. There are quite a few champions that, if you go online, all of the information is just going to say, don't even bother, it's a waste of time, etc. and so on. In my experience, this has not been the case. I have several of these champions, and I just kind of wanted to show you what happens if you build them correctly. My experience is that what you get out of champions is what you put in them. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've seen a lot of people that they'll get these champions, they'll be really excited because they got a legendary, and then they'll check online, and then they'll be disappointed that their legendary is quote-unquote bad. But I would posit that there is no such thing as a bad legendary, especially if it's one of your only legendaries. It is going to have better base stats, better maximum stats, and just it'll be a general overall higher quality than probably anything else you have, unless you've got one of a few epics. So to start with, I'm going to go over Warchief. I've seen a lot of people hate on him, and he's really, really good. So first of all, let's go ahead and just look at his skills. For his A1, he has Brutal Force, which attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 25% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. Now what this means is his A1 essentially has about a 75% chance to place this. It almost always places provoke, even without being booked or having the mastery that increases the chance of it being placed. His A2 attacks one enemy, places a provoke debuff for 3 turns, steals 2 random buffs from the target. So the order that they say that is not actually the order that procs in, and that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're using him. So the sequence of how this skill works is it steals 2 buffs, does the damage, it places the provoke, then steals the buff, then does the damage. So what this means is if somebody has immunity on, it will not place the provoke, even if it steals the immunity buff, or block debuffs buff, whatever you want to call it. It does, however, mean that if somebody has unkillable, you can steal the unkillable buff and kill them with it. Now, I'm not sure why Warchief gets so much hate. He's very good, both in arena and in anything where you're doing wave clearing, really. He hits pretty hard, and he can if you set him up right. And his A3 is what really helps. So he has Standstill, which reflects 60% of the damage taken back to the attacker. Defense increases by 15% for each dead ally. Now, I could be wrong on this, but in my experience, based on how much damage he takes and how much damage the opponent takes, it almost seems like it reflects the damage the damage that gets reflected, he doesn't take. I could be wrong on that. But the bottom line is, between just how much defense he has and the reflecting the damage, means that for the most part, people are going to be taking more damage than they're going to be dealing, or pretty close to the same amount, which makes him stay alive. He's really hard to kill. Now, a lot of people, from what I've seen, the recommendations for gearing him are basically they just recommend equipping him with low defense gear so that he takes the maximum amount of damage, so that you're reflecting the maximum amount of damage. Not to be rude, but that's dumb, because it's a percentage of the damage you take, and if you set him up right, you can just give him a lot of health. So, like, mine's got 43,000 health. So if he takes, 43,000 damage, it's reflecting 20 some odd, or over 20%, or over 23,000. So that's, it should be around over 43,000, or 23,000 that he'd reflect. That's a significant amount of damage being reflected. On top of that, I've got mine in lifesteal. I wanted to make sure he just survived, because if you build a champion so that they survive, then you're not going to lose if they don't die. I feel like should be pretty obvious, but if they don't die, you don't lose. That's how it works. And his damage all scales with defense. So if you just maximize his defense, give him some decent speed so that he can actually get his attacks in, maybe throw in some crit rate, a little crit damage in there, you can do a significant amount of damage. Marauder skill, I have seen, it routinely hits, when it crits, well into the 30,000 range. I actually have my mastery set up like an offense champion, so he has Helm Smasher, so it can actually do more than that. So having something that provokes somebody for 3 turns, so it just keeps them occupied for 3 turns, steals 2 of their buffs, and does 30,000 damage is insanely useful. Especially if you're playing against really any team that has a Reser on it. If somebody's got Syl, they've got Arbiter, Duchess Lilitu, though that one's a little bit harder to get the provoke off just because it's a negative affinity. You can keep them occupied until you've dealt with the rest of the team and then can deal with the Resurrector. That way, nobody gets rezzed. And that's incredibly useful. It can also occupy healers, whatever you need, provided, it doesn't kill them. And as I said, it can do a significant amount of damage. So I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to do a little demonstration on how effective he can be. No, not Hard Doom Tower. I just want to show you in normal. We'll start at the base, and just to give you an idea of how he functions. So, as you may have been able to tell, I do have some really good champions, like what are considered top tier. So when I say that these champions that are underrated, that people are saying are garbage, are not, and that they actually function almost as well as some of these top tier champions, I'm not like joking or lying to you. That's just honestly what it does. Alright, so right here we've got ally protection on everybody, and we've got counterattack. Never mind, everybody lost their counterattack, which is disappointing. I was hoping to actually to steal that. Ally protection for 1 turn. You know what? Yeah, let's go ahead and steal that. Alright. So I guess it's not reducing the damage, but as you can see, he's not taking very much either. And between the lifesteal and the low damage and dealing damage to the attacker, he doesn't die. I also have the mastery that puts a shield on him when something dies. So we're just going to go ahead and auto this now. You get the idea. But he honestly should be able to do this all the way through. You notice those two that are hitting him, they're negative affinity. He's still hitting for the 2,000 damage range on the weak hits. And that's his A1. I mean, it's not... His A1's not necessarily anything to write home about other than the high chance of placing Provoke, which is going to prevent them from dealing, using any of their other abilities. But as you can see, he's in no danger of losing. Honestly, could probably solo a whole lot more of the higher levels of Doom Tower. I just went with the base one just to give you an example. But you can use him in Doom Tower, dungeons. I use him in both regular and tag team arena pretty frequently. I don't use him as much in Classic Arena anymore, primarily due to so I don't use him in there as much anymore, mostly because my team comp has changed. I used to run a much more defense-based team composition, but I do every now and then just for fun, just for giggles. I do use him in tag team though on a regular basis, where he is a huge help. I have no intention of taking him out of there. He's usually one of the last ones alive. A lot of times he even outlives Duchess Lilitu without needing to be rezzed at any point. On that same team, I have Ignatius and Iron Brago, so it's a very defense-heavy team, and usually the role he plays is to occupy a heavy hitter, or a healer, or a rezzer until they can be dealt with by somebody else, though a lot of times he'll just kill them by himself, especially if he steals a counterattack buff, because what you'll have happen is you provoke somebody for 3 turns, and a lot of times in tag team, people run speed champions, or that are just, twice as fast as you're going to be running for defense. So if you've got counterattack on and you're provoking them with your A1, it basically just means you're doing an infinite loop of them hitting you, taking damage because they hit you, and then you counterattacking, them taking more damage and then being provoked. So you just occupy them the whole battle with just that. And it's pretty easy wins. Alright, so I think you guys get the idea for how well Warchief can perform. So let's go on to debunking some other champions that are supposedly bad. I've only got like 3 of them that are just considered bad outright. Actually, I probably have 4. Probably show you guys Grohak the Bloodied, but what we're going to do next is Lord Champfort. So, a lot of it is how you gear these champions. Is, you online and you look at some of these champions that they're like, oh, these are really bad. They're not really bad, they just don't fit into what a lot of the top-end players consider to be the end-game meta, or what their idea of the end-game meta should be on how they should function, and they don't actually take the time to explore how the champion actually functions and then use them accordingly, and gear them accordingly. And so some of the advice you'll get on these are not great. So with Lord Champfort, he is not considered a great champion. Take a look at his reviews. It's low end of 4s, a lot of 3s. Reality is you can use him all over the place. So the main thing you want is immortal gear. You want HP percent chest piece. I like crit rate gauntlets. You could probably go HP on that. You want speed boots. Every champion setup, you want speed boots. Honestly, you want as much speed as you can on every single champion unless you're speed tuning. There's never a reason to go with less speed unless you need them at a very specific speed for a specific team composition. So honestly, yeah, if you've got boots that aren't speed, you can probably just throw them out, just sell them, because honestly, you don't need them. Farm until you get speed boots. Trust me, it's worth it. It can be a pain, but it is worth it. So yeah, you go with full sets of immortal, maximize HP. But the other thing you want for Lord Champfort is accuracy. So you want HP and accuracy. Now, I don't have his accuracy up as high. I need to replace his banner at some point. I've been working on other champs, so I haven't had the silver to upgrade the accuracy banner I recently got. But let's go ahead and look at his kit and why you want accuracy. So his A1 has a 45% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. That can be pretty helpful in literally any fight, especially if you're fighting bosses. I've actually used him in Doom Tower a bit, just for that decreased defense. If it's a boss fight, you've only got one target, so having somebody that just puts a decreased defense on a single target is not a bad thing. The second we have is Earthshaker. Attacks all enemies, places decreased accuracy debuff and a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. So those are also really good. Again, for a lot of times on bosses. Now, it is an AoE, so that's also good for wave clearing and just helping your team stay alive. Now, this one you kind of want booked for that 3-turn cooldown. That is pretty nice. It's not necessary, though. The main reason you would want to put a book in him is for his passive. Again, it's not necessary, but it is really good. At the start of each turn, places a shield buff on this champion equal to 20% of their max HP for 2 turns. Will place a 15% decreased speed debuff for 1 turn on whichever enemy attacks this champion. It's kind of weird wording. He's one of the original champions, so some of their wording's a little different than it used to be. But basically, his passive makes it so that he gets a shield equal to 20% of his max HP, which should be a lot if you're running, full immortal sets or divine. You don't really want divine life. He's giving himself a shield anyway. You want immortal if you can. It's a pain to farm because you can only get like a couple pieces a day at most farming clan boss, and you got to make sure you're hitting high enough. But seriously, it's worth it. So what happens is if you lose, or if you get the cooldown, then you get a shield equal to 20% of his max HP every turn, which means they have to be going through a significant portion. So right now I've got him at about 80,000 health, which would be about 16,000 HP that they would have to get through just to hit him. And then he's healing for pretty close to 8,000 with the immortal sets. So that's if you've got the passive, that's a 24,000 HP threshold they have to overcome every single time he gets a turn, which means he can just tank things, especially since when they hit him, their speed is decreasing, which means they're not going as often, which means comparatively you're getting more turns than you normally would. So for those reasons, he's really good. So let's go ahead and do a quick demo. I actually tested this out on the previous Doom Tower. I ran through and I tested him out on just a bunch of different stuff. Basically one per tier, and found out he could either solo or just go infinite, so he wasn't killing them and they weren't killing him on the entire Doom Tower. So basically you could if you've got a well-built Lord Champfort and a decent, well, just really any other decent champion, you could duo the entire normal Doom Tower. So as you can see, he's doing a significant amount of damage with his A1. Now, 16,000 is nothing to sneeze at. It's not, again, it's not going to be attack champ levels. He's not an attack champ. What he is a stonky debuffer. And he's very good at that role. Notice that decrease attack, or decrease accuracy? That move they did, yeah, okay. So, you saw that none of the debuffs got placed. A lot of those had would have or should have done True Fear. They did not, and that's because their accuracy got decreased by 50%. So you don't even necessarily need super high resistance on it. Although, I mean, high resistance is never going to hurt you. It is a good thing later on, but okay, well that was just a lot of them not doing stuff. As you can see, he is going through this faster, significantly faster than Warchief. That's because he has a high damage AoE, so it doesn't take him as long to get through some of the stuff. That and he's got the positive affinity for several of these champs. Well, hey, they landed a, well, it landed a fear debuff, but it apparently did not matter. Alright, so as you can see, he's not taking any damage at all. There's a couple times where they have made it through his shield. You know, he immediately healed for over 7,000 health, and it didn't matter. So he's really good for dungeon running. He's good for Doom Tower. You could probably use him in Arena if you set him up well enough. I don't think mine's good enough for that. Certainly lower tiers of Arena. You could, where people haven't necessarily figured out as much. Though I do understand that Arena has gotten worse, and it is harder to find new players, even if you are also a new player. So, yeah. Plarium says that they're working on fixing it. We'll see what happens. Hopefully that is the case. Alright, so let's go with another one that has gotten a lot of flack, and that is Mountain King. Man. Out of all the underrated champions, this is the most underrated. Mountain King is probably my best champion. He is absolutely far and above my highest power level. Now, I keep running into people just in Arena who do not have him built right at all. That's a very frequent thing. I've run into like 3 that were built correctly, and mine still thrashed them. Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the guides online and what people are telling you to do with them. They're wrong. Yeah, there's no way around it. They're just wrong. You know, some of these guides you get, there's some big content creators out there, Ash, Hell Hades, and as one of my roommates said, they have very good opinions, but they don't know everything. So some of these champions that, you know, they tell you don't really bother with, or they're not that great, I would say do some stuff, investigate their skills, think for yourself, and really, if you invest enough into a champion, you're going to get a lot out of it. When I got Mountain King, I was super excited. I had a bunch of people say, my condolences, sorry you got Mountain King. And I was like, why? And I still don't know why. I still don't have an answer on why people think he's bad, other than I think they're gearing him poorly. So, once again, kind of like Lord Champfort, you just want full immortal. You want crit rate, crit damage, HP as much as possible, and speed. So I've got him at around 100,000 health. It's really not that hard to do with Mountain King. And the reason is, Mountain King, even though he is listed as an attack champ, he has the most base HP out of any champion in the game by about 10,000. He has 10,000 more HP than, like, the next highest one. Or, well, I guess it's 9,000. Lord Champfort has 22,000, and he's an HP champion. The base HP for Mountain King, if I can figure out where I put him again, is 31,000. He has an insane amount of health, and his attacks scale not only with his HP, but also with his attack. So if you're getting decent attack substats, you're going to be getting some really high numbers. So for his total stats right here, we've got 100,000 HP, almost 3,000 attack, 2,300 defense, and that is very important. A lot of people, when they gear Mountain King, do not gear him correctly. Specifically in the defense category, they just put everything into hit points or they put everything into attack, and they ignore the defense. And 100,000 HP does you no good if you've only got 1,000 defense, because somebody is going to just deal 100,000 damage to you because you didn't reduce the damage. That's just how it goes. Now, you'll notice his speed's pretty low. Even with that speed, I used him in Arena for a very long time. He's not my current composition, but he was my damage dealer on my defensive stocky team for a while. And the reason is because he hits like an absolute powerhouse, and he will survive until then. I still use him in Tag Team Arena. Frequently, I will have the rest of my team die, and the rest of my team that he is on is Valkyrie, Arbiter, and Syl, and he is outliving them. He will have almost all of his health left. The only thing I'll do is I'll get one turn with him, kill whatever damage dealer they have, because he will one-shot just about anything, and then he'll get hit, and they won't deal enough damage to overcome his health regen with the Immortal sets, because he's healing over 9,000 health a turn. So, again, we're going to just go in Doom Tower. The reason I'm doing Doom Tower is because it is towards endgame, so it gives you a decent idea on how the champions function towards the end, and replaying it doesn't cost me any resources. And because I'm currently running this as free-to-play and have been for a while, I don't have a lot of extra resources to just spend showing you guys stuff. Alright, so you saw that was 52,000 damage. Now, the damage only goes up from there. I guess I didn't actually show you guys what his abilities were with, like, the previous one. My apologies. We can do that afterwards, or I can just tell you what they are now, because I just have them memorized. So his A1 deals damage, scales with attack and HP. His A2 ignores, yeah, I saw that 80,000 damage. So his A2 ignores 50% of defense, and his A3 ignores shield and block damage. His A4, his passive, so it does something really fun. It increases his damage by 50% up to 100% for each kill he gets. Now, when you're killing somebody with Enchanted Axe in one hit, because you did 80,000 damage, because you ignored 50% of their defense, and his damage has incredible scaling. See, that was 71,000 damage on a negative affinity. That's... I want to be clear, that's not just indicative of how much damage he does in here. That's about how much damage he's doing in Arena as well. And if you've got weaken and decreased defense on enemies, you've got Enchanted Axe, especially if something like Helm Smasher procs, you're going to be doing well into the 100,000 damage range. I've done, I think, as high as 200,000 to enemy bosses. And keep in mind, this is not a max HP skill, so it is definitely usable late game, especially on bosses that reduce damage to 10% of their max HP from skills that deal damage based on enemy max HP. So this is... I cannot understate or I cannot overstate, rather, how good Mountain King is. He is incredible. And the information you're going to find online is going to tell you differently. Don't listen to them. Just, honestly, with any legendary, just don't listen to them. I think probably the worst legendary I have is Visix, and she's getting a revamp. She's been in need of one. And I'll be honest, if you gear her right, like, I've got her at 48,000 power, which is pretty dang high. But if you gear her correctly, it's not hard to get her to at least the same functionality, maybe a little better than a mid-tier epic. Like, she's going to do better than somebody like Jizo. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and actually show you guys Mountain King stuff. So, attacks one enemy, damage based on HP and attack. Attacks one enemy, ignores 50% of target's defense, damage based on HP and attack. Attacks one enemy, ignores shields and block damage buffs, damage based on HP and attack. And then his passive increases the champion's attack by 50. Oh, I guess this is his attack, not his damage. By 50% each time this champion kills an enemy, stacks up to 100%, resets each round. Now, so for that, you do kind of want to have decently high attack. Otherwise, increasing his, or, doubling his attack isn't going to make a difference. But you don't necessarily need it to be too high because you're going to be doubling it. So if you're getting most of your damage from your HP, and then you double your attack, you're just going to increase your overall damage. The other thing that's really good about him and Lord Champfort is they're not affected as much by stuff like decrease attack or decrease defense when it comes to dealing damage. That is one of the biggest things in Arena right now is everybody's running defense, or decrease defense and decrease attack debuffs. And there's a few ways around that. You can cleanse, some of it you can block, but most of the time it's Madame Saris, and she doesn't care if you have block debuffs. I think immunity sets will still work and prevent that, but if you don't have those, you're kind of screwed. So having champions that just aren't affected and don't care as much about it is incredibly useful. And HP champions, while decreased defense is going to affect them as far as how much damage they take, if you've got their HP enough, to an extent that will counteract that, which just is very useful. All right. So we're going to go over Grohak the Bloodied. Now, I need to re-gear him. As you can see, he's got a couple common pieces of gear. So I need to fix him. I just haven't, and he's got an attack, or just an offense set instead of like cruel or divine offense or something like that, which I need to put on him. Yeah, he needs re-geared. And I will eventually get to that. I'm just not there right now because I've got too many other champions to focus on. I do want to say Grohak, he's one that I believe Hell Hades referred to him as the worst champion in the game. That's just flat out not true. At the very least, he's better than most of the rares. I mean, there's always a couple exceptions that are just crazy strong. But he's also better than really most epics. He's a legendary, and he does function like one. Nope, I guess I shouldn't have backed out of that because I do actually want to show you that. Oh, we'll grab that in a sec. Yeah, so his skills. His A1, sap swiftness, attacks 2 times at random. Each hit has a 35% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Damage based on attack. His A2 attacks all enemies, fills the champion's turn meter by 20% for each enemy under a decreased speed debuff. And his A3 attacks 1 enemy and steals the target's turn meter. I will say that the Lord of War skill also does a ton of damage. And I don't even have him built right. And it still does a lot of damage. So, yeah, I know. Goodie bag. I got it. I see it. So let's go ahead and do Doom Tower. I don't know that he's going to be able to solo this. He probably will. But the issue isn't because of how of the champion. It's because I have him geared poorly right now. Because he was on my first legendaries, and I just didn't have the gear for him at the time. I had enough for him to function well, and he does actually function really well in dungeons. His aura does also increase speed in dungeons, so that he's one-shotted that guy and then took a second turn because he stole his turn meter. So I do have him in lifesteal. I've got most of my champions that I run in dungeons in lifesteal. The only ones I don't are ones I run exclusively in... For the most part, are ones I run exclusively in Arena. Lifesteal's just incredibly good. So, yeah, he's winning-ish. He's at half health. I think main issue is I really just need to re-gear him at some point. I have, I think, like 4 or 5 legendaries right now that are still 5-star that I need to work on, so I just really haven't gotten around to it. Yeah, so he's dealing 20,000 damage with that. I've seen it hit for into the 30,000 range. I like to use him in dungeon runs, because he does have a speed aura. So if you don't have a speed aura, that's really good. It's very useful for dungeons. And certain bosses, he will, just straight up steal their turn meter, which is useful, and then he'll go again. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to win this. Yeah, maybe. He did get a lot of health back off that AoE. We'll see. So, another champion that's considered bad is Visix. She is currently, as I said, usable. She is getting a rework, however, so she's about to get significantly better. Okay, so say he just went back to almost full HP, and that is... It's because he took multiple turns in a row and then hit with his AoE with lifesteal. So he's not actually losing yet. Now, because he's also taking extra turns from his Lord of War skill, it means it's also reducing turn meters. So, like... Or not reducing turn meters, it's reducing, what's the word? It's reducing skill cooldown. Because he's taking extra turns, and those extra turns are taking cooldowns off, or, taking 1 turn worth of cooldown off. So, yeah, there you go. This is kind of how I measure whether or not a champion is good or not, is if he can solo stuff in Doom Tower. Now, if it's a support champion, I do a little differently. I'll take a champion I know isn't very good, and then I'll pair them with a support champion that can, support them, pull them through. I know a lot of people don't like Yoshi. Let's see. It's another champion that's supposed to be not good. Let's see who I can pair him with. Somebody I don't have geared right now. Or you know what? Let's go with include vaults. I've got a level 50 in here somewhere that's just okay. Yeah, here we go. We got Soul Drinker. I've got him geared with some decent stuff. Probably should have paired him with, probably should have paired somebody else with him that can actually survive, because he doesn't actually do any healing. He does do True Fear, though. And I have him very fast. So, he's a support champion, though, which is why I'm demonstrating it this way. Though, realistically, he might actually be able to solo this on his own. I don't know. We're probably about to find out, though. Yeah. Okay, so his A2, does fire, or does 2 hits that can do HP burn on random targets, and unlike every other skill that does this, it is genuinely random. Every other skill that does 2 hits at random, at least one of the, or 2 to 3 hits at random, will, at least one of them will hit the target that you chose. This is not the case with his A2. It is genuinely random. It will go wherever it wants to, so it is a little bit risky. Yeah, I don't know that he's going to be able to solo this. He is a support champ. He's not designed for soloing. He is supposed to be debuffing. Really, where he would shine is probably Frost Spider, with those 2 hits that can place HP burn. True Fear would help with clearing waves, as well as, you know, he increases attack for your team. So he's definitely not bad. Like, he is good, and it's not too hard to make him fast either. Also, if I remember correctly, I'll take it off auto for a second. Yeah, his A1 also has a 30% chance of placing a stun debuff, which, that's a pretty decently high chance for an A1. So, yeah. And, I mean, most of these he has negative affinity for because there's a lot of spirit and he is still winning. Helps that he's taking 2 turns to the A1, but... yeah, well, maybe he can solo this as a support champ. Yeah, as you can see, he is also doing a decent amount of damage with his A1. It's in the 10,000 range. It's not, like, high. Again, he's a support champ, though, so it is kind of high for a support champ. You know, a lot of champs that get geared specifically for support aren't going to be doing that. They're going to be doing, you know, 2,000 or 3,000, maybe 4,000. So doing 10 to 14,000 is really respectable, and can definitely at least help with clearing out some of these extra waves. Alright, so we got another one down. Let's see here. Okay, so it looks like he is gonna survive this after all. Essentially soloed it as a support champion. So, I mean, this is endgame content. And these are all champions that people have just been like, yeah, they're really bad. And if you look at the reviews, they also say they're really bad. Now, let's take a look at Visix. Visix has horrible reviews. Now, again, she is about to get reworked, so she is going to be made better. But people were severely disappointed with her because, well, for 6 months of playing, you get Syl, and Syl is amazing. Syl of the Drakes is just an incredible champion. And she was magic. And then you got your Avoid champion at 9 months. So it's longer, so you expect it to be better, especially since it's a Void champion, which are traditionally much better than their non-Void counterparts. She wasn't. She wasn't better. She was worse. I won't sugarcoat it. But she wasn't bad. She just wasn't great. And because she wasn't great, people just hated her. They expected her to be great, and realistically, she should have been, especially with like where they set the bar with Syl. But yeah, let me just show you what she can do. So her current kit, kind of irrelevant because again, it's going to be changing. It's going to be better. But see that AOE decreases speed. And places a shield buff on her. Her A1 decreases turn meter. And her A2 does an ally protection and then provoked somebody. It was really weird setup that just didn't synergize well. But they're changing it, and it's also irrelevant right now because she's not running anybody else. As you can see, she is having no trouble clearing these waves, though. And because she's void, there's no negative affinity. So, yeah. If you get these champions that people online, all the reviews say, you know, don't bother, don't worry about it, and at the very least, if they're in the legendary category, they're worth using. Just don't listen to them. Trust me on this. They are worth investing in. I don't know what else to say on the subject. It's just there's a lot of negativity in the online community. There's a lot of elitists in the online community who have a very specific view on how Raid should be played. And a lot of these, you can look at some of the more, I guess, novelty sets and really gear them that way. And when I say novelty sets, I mean ones that aren't necessarily used as frequently, such as, you know, provoke sets. You could put them in stun sets. You could put them in avenging or counterattack sets. Or frost sets are good too. Like there's a lot of sets that aren't necessarily widely used, but for some of these champions that they're like, that's a bad champion. Well, no, they're not. You just didn't gear them right. And so some of those you can do kind of weirder or jankier builds, and if nothing else, it'll at least throw people off when you run into them in arena. But at most, what it'll do is it'll actually help you clear some stuff, which is really what you want out of a champ, is to be able to have them win. So, yeah, as you can see, she had no trouble clearing that, was not in any danger. Yeah. So if you get these champions and you look online and they're like, these are bad, don't use them, not worth it, just take that with a grain of salt. Look into it yourself, see what you can do with it, and invest, because these legendary champions, they're worth using. Again, not sure what else to say other than just don't be disappointed, don't get discouraged. Raid, you can absolutely play at your own pace. Most of the guides online are specifically geared for endgame players who are also spending money. They're geared for just high-end, top-end players. They don't take into account free-to-play energy limits. They don't take into account the amount of gear you're going to have as a new player. They don't take into account necessarily what you're going to have available. They're going to tell you, don't use these. But seriously, a lot of these, I've seen a lot of people where it's, the first or second legendary they get, and then it's a quote-unquote bad legendary, and they get discouraged and they don't want to play anymore because everybody online said, don't bother. I find that pretty sad because the game's a lot of fun. Even as free-to-play, it is a lot of fun. And for that, you can play at your own pace. You can use whatever champions you have, and they will still do well. And a lot of times, you can pair those champions with other just with other champions that a lot of those aren't even necessarily what they recommend. But you can create your own team compositions that aren't necessarily common or seen a lot before, and they will work. And some of them, who knows, you may come across something that actually functions better than what people have online. You're not going to become I guess I can't say that. I was going to say you're not going to become the best person online ever by not doing stuff outside the box. I guess you could. But that requires a lot of time and money and gearing towards very specific champions. However, I will say being an innovator is more fun, and I think more rewarding, and you can still end up being competitive top end. Again, I'm not the best player out there. I'm not, in the 100 range. I have played this game for a long time. I do play competitively in Gold 4. I'm about to start, or I currently do Nightmare Clan Boss, starting to do Ultra Nightmare. I've a decent portion of the way through hard on Doom Tower, working on my faction crypts. I'm about a little over halfway done on that. So, I've completed all the missions. I do know what I'm talking about. And yeah, I guess the main reason I did this is just hopefully to help people who are getting discouraged with Raid, thinking they're not able to compete because they don't have specific champions. I also wanted to say that most of the epics, there's probably a couple that just really aren't worth using, but most of the epics are absolutely worth using, especially if, you don't have a large pool of champions. Invest in them. If you... let's reword that. What you get out of champions is what you invest in them. Period. And if you do an initial setup and it doesn't work, change the setup. It may take time, it'll take some grinding, but that is the heart of what Raid is, for better or worse. So, yeah, I think that's about all I really wanted to do for this video. I'm going to be posting this on YouTube. Thank you to the one viewer who's just been here the whole time. And yeah, anyway, y'all have a good day. Love you. Bye.